It is officially roster projection season. Welcome into the Broncos Breakdown by Chat Sports. Matthew Peterson here, taking a swing at what I predict George Paton will do in 6 days when he has to trim this Broncos roster from 80 players down to the final 53-man roster. Now, this was not an easy quest I set off on. Now, I want to put a quick disclaimer out. This is not what I think I would do if I was GM. We don't care because I'm not the GM. This is my prediction of what I think ultimately the most important man in Mile High will do, George Paton. Now, before we check out my 53-man roster projection, I want you guys to get involved early on in the show. Give me a surprise player to make the Broncos roster. Someone that no one else is really looking at, but you've caught his attention, he's caught your attention over 2 preseason games, and you think has a real chance of making this roster. Because if we know one thing about the Broncos 53-man roster, there's always a UDFA on it, right? That's one of the proud traditions and a good run of seeing that happen. All right, I got something in my eye. Let's move on, though. Roster projection time. We'll kind of run through some of the obvious ones here. No surprise, Russell Wilson. QB2 battle, I'm giving the edge to Josh Johnson. Now, Brett Rypien is going to start against the Vikings on Saturday. If he goes out and he has one hell of a performance, that could change things. This is still a very active and close battle, but Josh Johnson, I think, has picked up and kind of gotten a leg over Rypien, so I'm putting Brett Rypien on the practice squad. Let's move on to the running back room here. Williams, Gordon, I think Mike Boone are all pretty much locks. Mike Boone's a little more of a, I would say bubble guy. I pretty have him as a safe candidate, but I'm also going to put on Andrew Beck. So the reason why I included him on this list is because I think George Paton will look at him as a bit of a Swiss Army knife. Someone who can play tight end, which we've seen him line up and do so far in the preseason, and also help provide that fullback role, which is a dying breed, and I don't expect it to be a huge part of Nathaniel Hackett and Justin Outen's offense, but the versatility that Andrew Beck offers, he's a bubble guy. I think he might sneak onto this roster. Let's look at the wide receiver position. The locks, right? Sutton, Jeudy, Hamler, Montrell Washington. And then after that, there's a huge drop-off of just handful of bubble guys. There's no one sort of in the middle. Kendall Hinton, I think, is probably the best of these bubble players, so I've got him making the roster. Tyrie Cleveland. This is an interesting one because he's been out with a throat injury for quite some time now, and if it was serious, the Broncos would have put him on the reserve PUP list, knocking him out for the first handful of weeks to start the season. They did not put Tyrie Cleveland on the PUP list, which to me signals he'll be back soon, and they want to utilize him soon. So that's why I've got him on this over players like Seth Williams and Brandon Johnson, who we'll look at more in just a moment. But cutdown day is right around the corner, and when the Broncos 53-man roster is announced, we will be getting a video out to you guys as soon as possible, which is why you got to have those notifications on. Because once that roster drops, me, producer Trace, hopping in the lab, getting you guys content ASAP Rocky, and that way you guys know who is on the final roster. So make sure you have those notifications on if you have not already. Click that bell icon and join nearly 20% of you that do. Moving on to the tight end room here. This is where Andrew Beck sort of takes away a spot from someone else because I've got Albert Okwuegbunam, Greg Dulcich, and then Eric Tomlinson serving more of that blocking tight end role, making the roster. No Eric Sauber, who had a great touchdown against the Bills. Andrew Beck, I think, coming on as that fullback, tight end hybrid, sort of your H-back, he might steal a tight end role from someone else on the roster. To round out the offense, we go to the guys up front. I'm having the Broncos take on 10 offensive linemen. Most teams are right there at 9 to 10, but with the uncertainty right now at right tackle with Billy Turner, I think Cam Fleming might sneak onto the roster to add some extra depth right there. Because Calvin Anderson has not been rock solid filling in for Turner so far. Now, Billy Turner has been working out and has been getting back in the flow of practice. Remains to be seen. He probably will not play in Week 3 against the Vikings. just because that has been Hackett's approach to the preseason. If you're somewhat important, shut it down John Taffer style. So right now I've got some backups like Glasgow, rookie Luke Wattenberg out of Washington making it. Muti, once he's healthy, he'll be returning, but he'll make this roster. And then Cam Fleming taking a 10th offensive lineman position to kind of help battle and just put a Band-Aid on the right tackle position for now. Some notable guys who just missed the cut. Brandon Johnson, he has been an awesome UDFA out of Central Florida. I think he's the type of player that plays on the practice squad this year, and he comes back next season in shape, hopefully, and almost on the inside track to pick up that last receiver spot because he's been great. Seth Williams, it was tough not including him on the roster as well. Ultimately, I think the Broncos roll with 6 wide receivers, and it's a numbers game. And he, unfortunately, might be on the outside looking in along with Sauber. All right, so with that in mind, if you guys had to give this Broncos offense a letter grade, what would it be? A, B, C, D, or F? Because despite it having a lot of big names, Russell Wilson, Jerry Jeudy, Courtland Sutton, Javonte Williams, national media is kind of down on the Broncos. So I'm curious where you stand. A, B, C, D, or F? I think I would go B+. Just don't want to, gas them up too much, let their heads get too big. No, let them earn that A status, B+ for me. Let's move on to the defensive side of the football now. Starting with the defensive line, I've got the Broncos taking 5 down linemen. Dre'Mont Jones, DJ Jones, Deshaun Williams, those are your starting defensive linemen right there. They are all essentially locks to make this roster. Mike Purcell was an interesting one because he's going to be rather a relatively expensive backup nose tackle, but this Broncos defensive line has not fared very well in 2 preseason games, which doesn't show a lot of confidence to the backups. But to me, I think that says, hey, not a lot of teeth right now. Let's bring an extra guy like Purcell on who's got that starting experience because, yes, we could save some money, but unless we have plans to spend it elsewhere, why don't we just keep him on the books? All right, and then finally, the rookie out of Iowa State, EU, or Wazurike, I've got him making the roster as well. Moving on to the outside linebacker edge position. Chubb, Gregory, Bonito, Browning, all those guys are locks to me. I really struggled with Malik Reed. I believe he will get this roster spot because of the uncertainty with Chubb and Gregory for 17 games this season. It's something that's never been done. These 2 guys in the same year have never played 17 games. Chubb's done it once, Gregory 0 times. So I think for that, they keep an extra edge rusher on just to have a little bit more depth and security. But Malik Reed has been a popular name in trade circles, so he could be moved closer to that roster cut down day. Now, while we power through this defense here, who is your favorite player on the Broncos defense? So, producer Sam Brown just got hopefully a nice big raise. When I were talking about who this guy is, right? Who is the favorite player on the team? Justin Simmons, Patrick Surtain, thumbs up. Let's fucking go. Let's go. Okay. Who is your favorite player on the Broncos defense? Sound off for me. Curious what you guys have to say in the comment section. Let's move to the inside linebacker position. I don't like what I did here, but honestly, I don't know what Peyton's doing at inside linebacker. Your guess is as good as mine. He's been relatively skinny at this position. Josie Jewell, Jonas Griffith, I for one was a little surprised when he cut Schober after just 1 game. Alex Singleton and Justin Trinett. I think he goes light inside linebacker. I'm excluding guys like Barrington Wade, who I literally initially had on this, and then I went, I don't think he makes this roster because I think he's going to want to put resources to other positions because new DC Evero, he's going to want to roll out a lot more nickel and dime sets, taking off a linebacker, putting on a safety or corner. So why have overkill at a position that clearly the Broncos don't value all that highly? Let's move on to the secondary, though. You got your locks. Surtain. I felt like I've said Drew Lock more today almost than any other Broncos show in history. Ronald Darby, K'Wan Williams, and Damari Mathis. All of those guys are guaranteed on the 53-man roster, basically. Then you got your 7th-round pick out of Wisconsin, Fan Hicks. I think he is safe. And then Bassey, I got him as a bubble guy. Does anyone notice a name not on screen right now? I hate this. I hate this because I'm a big fan of Okwuegbunam, but I don't think he makes this roster. Unfortunately, he suffered a 4 to 6 week injury with a dislocated left elbow in that Bills preseason matchup, and the Broncos didn't stash him on the PUP list, which to me sounds like they might not really see him being a part of their long-term plans. Just a third-round pick back in 2020. He did not have a good preseason week 1 game, followed up, unfortunately, with an injury. The Broncos at this point, when you're George Paton, you are looking for excuses to try and make your life a little easier to get down to 53 players. Okwuegbunam will be a nice pickup for someone else. He will definitely get snagged off the waiver wire if he is released altogether. But ultimately, this is my surprise cut right here. And I hate it because I'm a big fan of Okwuegbunam. Loved what I saw out of him his rookie season. I just don't think there's a path for him to this roster. As for the safety room, this is something that's going to be a little different. Because last year, the Broncos primarily rolled with 4 safeties. I think they go 5 this year, right? Because I think new DC Evero, he's going to want to implement a lot of 3 safety sets. He did that a ton with the Rams last year. In fact, the Rams used more 3 safety sets than basically anyone else in football. They were at the top of the NFL. So with that in mind, Simmons, I think Kareem Jackson's relatively safe. I didn't put him locked because of the age factor, but he's safe. Caden Stearns, Delaren Turner-Yell, the rookie out of Oklahoma, and P.J. Locke. I've got Locke taking that last roster spot over someone like Reed, who's going to offer you a lot of special teams versatility. I liked what I saw to P.J. Locke last preseason. Hasn't made a ton of splash plays so far this year throughout training camp and whatnot, but those are my 5 safeties on this roster. And then to round it out, special teams here, McManus, Sam Martin's going to win the punting battle, I presume, so I've got him on this over, and then you got your long snapper, Jacob Bobenmeyer, Mower. So those are my 3 special teams guys making this 53-man roster. All right, before we send you guys on your way, I appreciate everyone for clicking on today's show. And if you are ready for September 12th at Lumen Field in Seattle, Washington, the Pacific Northwest, for the ultimate revenge game that will not be, because I think Geno Smith will start against the Broncos. But drop a let's ride in the comment section if you are ready for real Broncos football to return.